And if you thought that maybe that wasn't a biblical subject, you're wrong. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, one of every 6 verses talks about money. 29 parables in the Bible, 16 of them talk about money. It's a big deal because all of us have to have money. And all of us work to get money. And all of us have an idea about how we're supposed to use our money. We all know that we're supposed to give. What did the Jewish people, what were they supposed to give? The best of the best and 10% of it. 10% of the gross, 10% of the net, 10% of what? The little grains, counted them out, got 10 of them, they'd give 1 of them. Their sheep, their goats, whatever. From the very beginning of time, murder occurred over money and giving to God or not giving to it, whichever. In the United States today, 2% of our income is donated to God on average. Most people count everything that they give. Now that counts some billionaire that gives a small fraction of his, and it counts some poor person who gives most or all of his. But 2%. In the world today, 1%. So in the United States, we do seem to have an idea that we are to contribute more in the church. And none of these figures may be right. Who really knows? But it's considered to be that way in polling and research and whatever. In the church, 2.5%. The average contribution is estimated to be $17 a week. Now, let me tell you something. We're not here to talk about whether you should give 17 or 15 or whether you can get by with 10. We're not here to say, okay, let's try to boost it up to 35. We're not here for that. That's not what this class is going to be. What I want us to do is to focus on this so that we can make ourselves grow into it. Because not a single one of us, in all likelihood, give the way we should. No, let me change that. Give the way we want. I want to give more. You do too. So let's grow in that. In fact, in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, after listing all the things that the Corinthian church was good at, you excel in this and you excel in that, and you have knowledge and you just do so. Let's grow in this grace also. So, the reason I brought it up now is because we're studying Nehemiah. And wouldn't you know, it's right there smack dab in the middle of all of it. As a matter of fact, as you see at the top of your study sheet, this was the only thing that stopped the work. They threatened their lives. They ridiculed them. They made it hard on them. They did everything they could, and it didn't work. But you let some money problems roll in, and everybody just stopped. There was a strike. We're not working anymore. We can't afford it. Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 5. Nehemiah chapter 5. There arose an outcry. Do you know where that word was used? That same word was used when the people of Israel had an outcry because they were enslaved in Egypt. The same word. They're being tortured, they're being abused, they're working, slaves, and there was an outcry, get us out of here, oh Lord. And now we have the same word used in Nehemiah. There was an outcry. And it had to, in fact, not only were the men fussing, crying, and going crazy, the women were too. It said even the wives. Interesting situation. Everybody had trouble. Everybody was feeling the pinch of the economy. And part of the reason they were feeling the pinch of the economy is, if you'll look at the beginning, it says we need food. When you start getting hungry, and sure enough, you'll start saying, I need help. Our families are big. Now, what were the people doing all this time? What were the people in Israel? What project were they involved in? Anybody heard of the wall they were building? And they were working night and day because they accomplished an impossible feat in 52 days. So they were all working. The nobles were working. The women were working. The families were working. So who was doing the crops? Nobody. So there's a reason why there wasn't any food. But then, as time went on, they were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous. We still have these big families. And in order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others are saying, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. All right. The second thing, you mean on top of them working like crazy and having to work on the wall, that they had to mortgage their land because it was a famine? You ever gotten a second mortgage on your house? You got it paid off, or a lot of it paid off, and then all of a sudden financial times come and how am I going to get it? I got to have $20,000, get a second mortgage on the house and start paying it off again. That's what they did with their lands. They mortgaged off their lands. And then if they couldn't pay that, they lost their land. Somebody else was working in that. Then they still didn't have any food, and they still needed money. Still others were saying, we had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Well, is not the Bible right on target with real life today? Taxes are high. Y'all paid any property tax lately? Maybe that doesn't count at your house. But boy, oh boy, if you've got your house paid off because you're an old person and you worked on it for all this time, now all of a sudden it doesn't come out of the mortgage payment, and lo and behold, come November, there's that property tax. They were exacting taxes from Artaxerxes. He loved having the whole area under his command because he got to get money off of this and money off of that and money off of the other. I mean, who's going to pay for all that wine that his server is giving to him, that his cupbearer is handing to him? Somebody's got to pay for all that. Who's going to pay for all those lavish meals? Somebody's got to pay for that. So the poor folks out there having their vineyards, they're paying for that. So We borrowed for taxes. I just sort of thought it was interesting. I realized this wasn't the king of Judah that was asking for taxes, but do you remember when they wanted to have a king so they could be like all the others? And remember what Samuel told them? You get a king, you're going to be paying taxes, and your children are going to be going off to the army. You sure you want a king? Oh, yeah, I want a king. And now they're fussing and hollering. We got to pay taxes. We got to borrow money to pay taxes. Were they whining? Some commentators believe it's just a bunch of whining. I have an idea that it was as legitimate as it could be. When you start getting in a financial squeeze, you know how hard. And yeah, you may whine some. But this world is set up on money and power. And if you don't have any money, the next one says you don't have any power. Although we are of the same flesh and blood, our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others. Boy, this is a spiraling down economically. I can't do anything about it. I've borrowed all the money I can. I've mortgaged the fields. We're still hungry. We've got to be able to eat. And lo and behold, we're having to give our children in debt service. That was done. They weren't slaves like we think of slaves. They were there as long as the debt was still being owed. They put themselves into indebted servitude to pay off what money they needed. And who'd they do that to? Other Jews, their own brethren. And that's what made Nehemiah angry. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. Why? Because they were legitimate. What they were facing was truly tough. Their heartache was real. And Nehemiah said, "You're not doing the right thing." And so here's what he did. I pondered them in my mind. I like the American Standard Version. I consulted with myself. He got mad, and then he thought it over. He got mad, and then he talked to himself. You ever talk to yourself? 97% of the people talk to themselves, 25% of those out loud.
Some people talk to themselves at night. I won't mention anybody.
Whether they're awake or asleep.
Fortunately, she hasn't been able to
Well,
translate it into get.
if you lived at the Martin household, you would think that there were people all around because Sweet Nose Martin has always just talked everything out. I worried about that for a while. Turns out that's what you're supposed to do. It's really a very creative way of working through situations, especially if they're technical. So only 25% of the folks actually talk out loud, but I do. Donna says that it saved me a lot of lectures that she talks out loud. Usually when I'm not around, I guess. But that's what Nehemiah did. He started saying, all right, so now everybody's, can you see it? He's just thinking this out. And then he says, all right. And he goes to the nobles and he accused the nobles and officials. I told them, you are charging your own people interest. Now, I think there's a gap there. I think he went to them privately and said, you guys are charging interest to your own people. And don't you know that we're not supposed to do that? Did you know that the Israelites in Deuteronomy chapter 23 says that you're not supposed to charge interest on food or any other thing that you might be able to charge interest on to your fellow Israelites. Now, to the Gentiles, to the other people, go ahead, charge them out the wazoo. It's so funny because the Jewish nation has a what's the word? They're sort of a reputation. I think that's it. They have a reputation for being financially astute, financially involved, tight. I don't know. Back in the day, we had a business associate that Jeff and I would notice. We just thought he was the best businessman we'd ever seen. He was involved in sort of part of appliances, but different from us. But he just seemed like he just was so good and he did so well. And comes to find out, as we learned more about everything, it wasn't that he was really such a good businessman. He was just tight and never spent any of his money on anything, so he always had money. Well, the Israelites were not supposed to not supposed to charge interest. And so he told them that. But I think it was met with stone cold silence. Because the next verse says, so I called together a large meeting to deal with them. Doesn't the New Testament talk about that? If you got a problem with somebody, go talk to them. If that doesn't work, take a couple with you and talk to them. If that doesn't work, in front of the whole church, talk to them. So he called the whole meeting, called together a large meeting to deal with them, and said, as far as possible, we have brought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people, only for them to be sold back to us. Now let's go to our thing here. We've seen what the problem is. We started out with we need food. We mortgaged our land. We borrowed for taxes. We are in debt. We have no power to get out of debt. Now, Nehemiah has to come up with a solution. And that's what we all want. Okay, we've all got financial problems. We've all got these issues. We've all faced them, if not now, have or will. And so what's the solution to it all? Every time Nehemiah faced a problem, we sort of laid it out, your heart, your head, and your hand. He had the emotion of anger. He thought it over and came up with a plan and then took action. And that's where he got all the people together and he said, look here, here's what you're doing. You are enslaving Israelites. Well, what kind of thing is that? You ever been driving along the road and almost hit a buzzard?
Buzzard hit me once.
Because the buzzard is sitting there feeding on what? Something that has already been hit. I've seen buzzards get hit, and I've seen buzzards dead right there on top of a dead raccoon. And I thought, duh. I mean, that's why they're there, crazy. Grab it and yank it over. Don't stand there and eat it and let the Mack truck get you too. But this is exactly what they were doing. They were so caught up because, guys, listen to me. There's always somebody who's got the money and taking advantage of it. Always. My guys at work have said more than once, Mr. Mark, you got all the money in the world. You can do this. Yeah. Right. Right. All the money in the world indeed. I don't care how much you have. If you're not careful, it won't be enough. But no matter how much you have, don't take advantage of it. Keep on making money. It's all right. It's all right. And if I could say anything that I wanted to get across today, you don't need to be ashamed or embarrassed that you've been successful, or that you are successful, or that you will be more successful, or that you are planning on being more successful. There's nothing wrong with that. It's anticipated, it's expected. You're supposed to utilize what's here. Just don't take advantage of people who can't be taken advantage of. Don't take advantage of anybody. And grow in the grace of giving more. Because none of us have enough. None of us give enough. None of us will ever figure it all out. In all probability, it will be one of those things that if we work on it, walking next to the Lord, He will move us in the direction that we're supposed to be going. Because I think we get sort of stagnated and say, well, if $17 is enough, and that's what the average is, then I'll just give my $17 because the Bible doesn't say you have to give 10%. There are a lot of people who say, well, the Jewish nation without having salvation from their sins gave 10%, then Christians ought to sure be giving more than that. I don't know if I thought all that or not, but I do know this. There's a reason why God didn't say you need to give a certain amount. There's a reason why. Why? Because He didn't want to limit you. Somebody, if you've got it, turn to, where does it say in Deuteronomy? Let's go to Deuteronomy 23.
Well, they're turning there.
Go.
They gave more than 10% because there was other offerings that went beyond.
That's correct.
10% at the time.
That's correct. So 10% of your gross, 10% of your net, 10% of what? I don't even think that's an argument. I think that's why the Bible says, be a cheerful giver and grow in this grace. It's sort of like the little girl that her mama gave her a quarter and $1. And she said, you put one of them in the collection plate and you can have the other one. Back to church. She said, which one did you give? The little girl said, well, I was going to give the $1, but the guy up there said that you should be a cheerful giver, so I found giving the quarter would make me happier. I suspect that's true. When you grow in this grace, there is nothing better in this world than giving. Nothing. No better feeling. No more closeness with God than when you're giving. God gave everything, made everything, and handed it over to us. Isn't that something? And then, since that wasn't enough to get us to heaven to live with Him, He gave His Son, His only begotten Son, in whom He was well pleased, and died a brutal death. You see why I told you last week, if you will take the vitamin W of the Word of God every day, and vitamin G of gratitude, you're not going to be discouraged. because you're going to see all that, you're going to remember all that, and then you're going to do everything you can to pry your tight-fisted fingers off of that, and you're going to give away. Because you never look more like God than when you're giving. And it's a great, great feeling. In Deuteronomy 23, has somebody got that where it says, well, you're not supposed to pay, you're not supposed to charge? Who's got it? Somebody.
19.
What?
Verse 19.
Yeah. Would you read that?
Do not charge your brother interest, whether on money or food, or anything else that may earn interest.
And then read the next one.
You may charge a foreigner interest, but not a brother Israelite, so that the Lord your God may bless you in everything you put your hand into the land you are entering to possess.
Don't charge interest so that God can pay you the interest. Am I wrong? Isn't that what that said?
You know, I'll tell 2 stories of myself. There was a point in time in my life, a good while back, where I was due to receive tens of thousands of dollars, not 30-some thousand dollars. At that point in time, for some reason, I got stingy, and that money just evaporated. It went away. Didn't get it. Other times I've been generous, and money came to me from, gosh, I had no idea that was coming.
Isn't it something?
Yeah, Malachi 3 is correct.
And our money is so important to us. Of all the things in the world that we have to learn to treat properly with our spiritual life, and there's nothing wrong with money. It's not money that's the root of all kinds of evil. What is it? The love of money. And just because you have $5 in the bank doesn't mean you don't love it. And if you have $1 million, it doesn't mean you do love it. This is such a personal issue, and it isn't intended to be. And that's the reason it's so hard for everybody to talk about. You know, you might as well tell me how much you paid for your house, because all I got to do is go to the certain place, and I'll know everything you've done real estate wise. That was sort of interesting when I found that out in my life. You know, yeah, well, anybody in the world doesn't even know who you are can know.
You know what else was interesting?
Yeah.
When I was in grad school a couple of years ago, I went and looked up every single professor's salary because it's all public.
It's
record.
all public record.
Now, soft money didn't count, but
Well, you
their
don't
hard
know.
salary.
You wouldn't be able to find out the football players' money, though.
No.
There are going to be things that are hidden, but it's just amazing how much information is out there that we try to hold on to. I'm going to tell you what I think. I think God is saying, don't charge your brethren interest to the Jewish nation, because if you won't be stingy, I'm going to pay you a whole lot more than 10% or 15% or 20%. If you charge 10% interest, then that limits me. You give it, and I'm going to take care of you.
If I'm hanging on, I'm gripping, I'm using a lot of muscle and tension. My hand is open and I'm giving. It's relaxed and doesn't take a lot.
Doesn't take as much energy, does it? Don't get cramps when you give it. I'm going to tell you, Malachi, I promise I'm going to finish this. So the people, so Nehemiah is saying to them, we're doing the same thing that has been done to us, and that's not good. So I continue. What you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? Look at this. Look at the solution. He's saying, look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. Look at yourself. You're doing the same things that have put you in a bad, bad situation. Then he is saying, look at me. Look at what I am doing. I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain, but let me stop charging interest. Give back to them immediately their fields, vineyards, olive groves, houses, and also the interest that you are charging them. 1% of the money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. He's saying, all right, I've been giving, you've been giving, you're charging interest. It's not right. We're going to stop that. Give them back 1%. Maybe they've been paying 1% a month, and for a year it was 12%. I don't know, but he said, give them some back. If you've taken their olive trees, give it back. If you've taken their vineyards, give it back. Let's start all over. That's what the year of Jubilee was anyway. In the 50th year, it was a reset of the whole economic climate. Give everything back. Now, here is an interesting thing. They said, we will give it back. Oh, my goodness. You're doing wrong. Stop it. Okay. God worked in these people's lives. If there's a sin in my life, no, when there's a sin in my life, I need to stop it. Just that simple. You're not going to ease your way out of it. You're not going to baby step your way back to Jesus. Stop it. If your money situation in your mind is not right, stop it. We will give it back. We will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Hold the phone. Stop right there. Let me call the notary. That's essentially what he did. Let me get the priest in here. I want you to make an oath before the priests and the scribes. So as soon as somebody says, I'll buy it, you say, here, sign right here. That's exactly what he did. And then if that wasn't enough, in the old Jewish custom, he just reached down to his robes and he shook the robes and said, if you don't pay what you're supposed to, may God shake them loose. And they never charged interest again.
Okay. Don't you think that all of these things with the taxes, the land, the famine, all that stuff have been going on for a long time? This just brought it out. It didn't all happen in these 52 days. It had been going on, and he just made it known.
Exactly, Lyndon. And that's why for 151 years, they hadn't done anything. Because they were, and that's why everybody was so angry. They didn't want to change it. Guys, we get so happy in our sin. We get so comfortable. We lie so softly, so warmly, so snugly. We don't want to stop it. That's why we need each other. Nehemiah was strong enough to say, you're doing wrong. You need to change. And they admitted it and stopped. When I was 11 years old, I gave myself to Jesus. Joe Bryant baptized me at 39th Avenue. Nate's grandfather, Dan Bryant's father. And for the next 65 years, too much of it has been spent trying to grab it back. Sometimes in big chunks and sometimes in little slivers. The giving situation is giving you, and your money follows. Because everything we have is God. If we have very little, that's on God. Correct me if I'm wrong. Come up with a different idea if you have one. I think everything. If you're doing well, God's blessing. And you have a responsibility. Daddy gave the little boy 2 nickels, one in each hand. He said, you can have one for ice cream after church, and the other one you put in the collection plate. As he was going down the road, he tripped and fell, and one of them rolled into the sewer. It was gone. He said, oops, there goes your nickel, God. Is that like us? Well, I was going to give that, and then all of a sudden I had to pay taxes. So there went your contribution, boy. No, we know better than that. My verse that has changed my life and my understanding of all of this is from the Old Testament. And if you want to argue that, well, now, that's Old Testament. Well, I'm going to show you, but you're not even going to argue that. But just in case, it's very close to the New Testament. It's Malachi. Malachi, chapter 3, verses 8 through 10. You see it on your study sheet there? Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see. Test me. Ladies and gentlemen, I have tested the Lord. I took that to heart. I believe that. And I'm here to tell you, without equivocation, without any misunderstanding, without any doubt, without any nebulous area, it is true. We're not allowed to test God. Don't test God. Test not the Lord. But here he said, test me. And you will find that I will give you pressed down, running over, abundantly, on and on and on. And it is true. I know it's true. You can't convince me it's not true.
You know, when I read Luke 12, 13 through 21, about a guy that did well and built bigger barns, I think about the modern day building bigger storage units. But there's nothing wrong with building bigger storage units as long as you use them to help other people. It's when you use them to store your own stuff and hoard things that is wrong.
Yes, and I think too, as I've looked at that, because when we would need more warehouse space or whatever, that popped right into my head. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Well, if you look at it closely, it's not just having the bigger barns. It was ignoring his soul.
Exactly.
He's so wrapped up in the finance.
Ignoring.
That he's ignoring his soul. He said, thou fool, because today it's going to be taken away from him.
And that's not just bigger storage units, that's bigger houses.
Right, of course.
Bigger cars, that's whatever it is. that you're putting ahead of
that you're
God.
spending more, that you're spending more on. Yes,
And Carl, I'm not saying nobody should have storage.
right. No. Here we go now, internal.
Yeah, what was said earlier, that this has been going on for a long time. You know, charging higher interest. I'm trying to look at, you know, how this potentially applies to us in the modern day. A couple of weeks ago, I read the whole chapter, and my conclusion was that Nehemiah was a model of civil leadership.
Yes.
You know, he was a model of civil leadership. When the people complained to him that, you know, there are exorbitant, you know, if you like, interest rate charges, and one, he was so dynamic, probably because he was prayerful, as he always insisted. Those nobles, who are they? You know, I was trying to interpret it.
Yes.
They represent maybe business leaders at the time, you know, and he engaged them, you know, that, hey, look, this is what is going on. You need to do something about it. And from, you know, your teaching, I get the impression that even in our private businesses and all that, we need to do the right thing. And that is also a form of giving.
Yes, thank you. Good insight.
Yeah,
That-
that is also
That's a form of giving.
of giving.
Correct.
And I'm impressed, you know, the way Nehemiah was open, he listens, interest rate, he called the right people, engaged with them, and all that. And like he said, something that is systemic, something that has been going on for a long time, you know. So as I don't know what the church as a body can do, but individually, you know, as Christians or believers, we need to be careful, rethink and think through. Even if a system has been working for a long time, has been there for a long time, we have to find a way, of course, be prayerful and see if we can do something little to change the situation for the benefit of the community.
Amen. Because I believe and have tested God as he suggested in Malachi, it makes everything else easier for me because I know